Hello, everyone. This is Renee Rentmeester. I'm the creator and executive producer of the Cooking Without Looking show. And today we're quite honored to have Dr. Kirk Adams with us. Kirk is with Innovative Impact. He's the managing director. This is his own company. Kirk, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Well, I'm so happy to have you. And we had you on the show. And how did you like the show, being on it?
Well, it was a little bit nerve-wracking. I cook a lot. I've cooked a lot for a long time, but I have not done it on camera and knowing other people are watching me. So I think it went well. The frittata turned out well. So I made one of our family standbys, and I had made one the night before that I was able to show, and then baked the one I made during the show. So we had two. So my wife dropped one of them over to our son and his wife and our little 10-month-old grandson, Evan. So we were able to share.
Oh, well, you did a great job, Kirk. I mean, you were a pro, so you didn't look nervous or anything one
Well,
bit.
good.
So you did great. Well, so tell us a little bit about your blindness journey, Kirk. What has that been like for you?
Well, it's interesting. I was born sighted and was a sighted child up until I was in kindergarten, and both my retinas detached when I was 5 years old, and got off the school bus to walk home and got lost because my retinas had detached and I couldn't see well. And one of the neighbors found me in their backyard crying and took me to my
Oh,
mom. And she, immediately knew something was going on. So got me right away to the doctor, who pretty quickly figured out there was something going on with my eyes. So I had an emergency surgery at a hospital here in Seattle that wasn't successful. So I remember I went into the hospital with some sight. And, the next day I was totally blind,
oh man.
and my my parents were fairly young people. I think they were 26 at the time. They were both starting careers as public school teachers, and they were told that I wasn't going to be able to return to the neighborhood school because they couldn't support children with disabilities there, and that I would need to go to the state school. So that was the model at that time in the mid 60s, where blind kids and deaf kids, for that matter, would tend to go to a state school or residential school.
How did they
And
take
they,
that, Kirk?
what's that?
How did they take that news?
I don't really know. They just did it. I mean, they went down to we lived north of Seattle. They visited the Washington State School for the Blind in Vancouver, Washington. Weren't very impressed. I had been referred to a retinal surgeon who was at the University of Oregon Medical School in Portland. So I had eye appointments down there. And someone said that the Oregon State School was really good. So they went and visited and liked it. And they quit their jobs and moved the family down, and chose a place to live, Silverton, Oregon, so that I could be a day student. So unlike lots of the other kids, I didn't need to stay there in the residential setting. So I got to go to school every day and go home. And I was there first, second, third grade, and I had a wonderful teacher, Mrs. Summers, and she taught me to read and write Braille, which I do every day, and type on a typewriter. And they had an O&M instructor, so I learned how to travel, very confidently with a white cane as a 6-year-old. And then in third grade, I attended the School for the Blind in the mornings, and then a public school nearby, 8 or 10 blocks away, that I walked independently to. In the afternoon, I went to public school. Then in fourth grade, I just started in public school in our little hometown, and went all the way through school. I was always the only blind student, and kind of sink or swim. But my parents were, like I say, teachers, so they were very disciplined, or they required discipline from their children as far as homework and getting good grades and being involved in athletics. My dad was a basketball coach, and we were expected to turn out for sports. And I wrestled and ran cross country in high school.
Oh,
Got
wow.
got an academic scholarship to a school called Whitman College in Walla Walla, Washington. And
Now, how did you run cross country? How did they
with
set
with
up
with a with
sessions?
a guide, with another person. Actually, the girls cross country coach at our high school was a very accomplished distance runner, and he would run with me, kind of just side by side, and give me visual information about slope up coming up, and we're going to turn 20 degrees to the right in about 20 yards. And he was such a good runner, he could actually run. He could run my pace and talk
Oh
normally.
my
So
God.
he was a very good competitive runner.
Well, now all this time as a child, when this first happened to you and as you were growing up, what were some of the thoughts that were going through your mind?
I would say um, life was pretty idyllic in fourth, fifth, sixth through sixth grade. I loved the school for the blind. They had us do a lot of activities, a lot of experiential learning, hiking, backpacking. I remember building igloos out of big
Oh,
snowballs, climbing trees,
wow.
being in the tide pools. So learned how to be really confident as a blind person, moving through space, and loving my body and what it could do, and just they really instilled a lot of confidence in you.
And
And then
nobody was
for
feeling sorry, right?
right, and then fourth, fifth, and sixth grade were good, and then middle school, high school were tougher, as I was the only blind kid in these schools in these small towns. We moved from Silverton, Oregon to Snohomish, Washington when I was in high school. And in these rural towns, when kids turn 16, they all get driver's licenses, and many get their first job. So
Sure.
I had neither of those, so it was fairly isolating. Um, I'd say middle school through high school, and I certainly had a depression and uh, feelings of helplessness, frustration, lots of frustration. So we weren't connected with any other blind people. I didn't know any other blind person. We weren't connected with the federation or the council. There were no blind people in our town, so it was pretty isolating. So it's great today with the internet that families can get connected with other families, and young blind people can connect with other young blind people, and families can connect with successful blind adults who can be role models. So
The
I
internet
just say,
has really opened up the world
yeah,
for
so I
people.
encourage everyone to do that. In college, kind of was a big turning point. I went to a small liberal arts college, and I had a very navigable campus, and it was in Walla Walla, Washington, so it was kind of isolated, and all the kids just stayed on campus all the time. And I found a good social network, and so that was wonderful. Met uh, my wife Roz there the first week. We were in the same dorm, and we had a class together and got to know one another. And now we've been married 37 years and have two
Oh,
wonderful, amazing adult children. So
that's wonderful.
employment was a thing. I graduated with a 4 point in my area of study, economics. Was Phi Beta Kappa and cum laude, and just struggled to find a job out of school. I'd applied to some graduate schools and got in, but I really decided I wasn't ready for more school. I wanted to work and get married and buy a house and have kids. And like
And
many
that's
many
again.
yeah, like many young blind people, just had a lot of challenges finding that employment opportunity.
What were some of them?
Well, I really wanted to be in finance, and I was very interested in publishing. So I applied for finance type jobs, financial analyst jobs. Um, the fact of the matter is that I knew nothing about business. My parents were school teachers. All their friends were school teachers. I had no contacts in business. I had no knowledge of business. It was just an idea. But I started sending out resumes farther and wider. I would get a phone interview, and they would invite me in for the in-person interview, and I'd come in with my cane and my braille and my slate and stylus, and would not be hired. And I think a lot of employers, even today, who've not worked with blind people, just don't have a concept of how a blind person can use the tools and techniques
Sure.
that we have to successfully perform jobs. So I started sending the resumes out farther and wider, and sent one to a small family-owned securities brokerage firm. And the sales manager had also been an econ major at Whitman, like 15 years before me. So he called some of the professors that we had in common, and they, said, sure. It was a sales job. So
Sure.
they said, sure, Kirk, Kirk can talk on the phone. So I took a job selling tax-free municipal bonds over the phone, and I did that for 10 years, and
Wow.
made quite a fine living for a person in their 20s. And we did buy a house, and we did get married, and we did have our kids. And then I turned 30 and really decided I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. So went through a reflection process, used the book What Color Is Your Parachute? And
Oh, yes, yes, yes. I'm familiar with that. I read that.
yes, yeah. So after I finished all the exercises and everything, I got clear that I really should be in the nonprofit sector, and I should be in a leadership management position, and I should work for organizations that created opportunities for people who are blind. And so after a couple more twists and turns, I got involved in fundraising as a professional fundraiser. I had a couple fundraising jobs, one with the Talking Book and Braille Library, one with the Lions Sight and Hearing Foundation, one with a large childcare organization, and got a call from the Lighthouse for the Blind here in Seattle, who said they wanted to start a foundation and a fundraising program, and they'd heard there was a blind person in town who knew how to do that. Would I like to come in for a visit? I did, and I liked it, and went to work there in 2000. I became the CEO there in 2008, and shortly thereafter, a couple of years thereafter, was invited to join the board of the American Foundation for the Blind, which I did. And then they were ready for a transition as my predecessor at AFB was getting set to retire. So they went through a search process, and I was given that opportunity to lead AFB. So moved from Seattle to New York City, and then from New York City to the Washington D.C. area, and I was privileged to lead that amazing, iconic organization for 6 years, and I think accomplished a lot of good things around reorganizing, restructuring, taking the organization virtual before the pandemic, getting clear focus on systems change, on research, public policy. And then the pandemic happened, and we decided we needed to be closer to family, so we moved back to our house in Seattle, and decided that I was ready for a different approach to creating opportunities for people who are blind. I'd been leading nonprofits for a while, and I decided I wanted to step into the consulting space, which I've done. So as of July 1 last summer, I created Innovative Impact LLC. Managing director is the title I gave myself. It's really only me. I've got 3 or 4 people that I hire on a project basis. I've got a virtual assistant. I've got a person who helps with content, marketing content, and social media. I've got a person I can bring in to help manage projects. But I'm really focusing on accelerating inclusion of people with disabilities in the workforce. And I'm tending to work with privately held companies that are large enough to have resources, not so large that they're bureaucratic. Rapidly growing companies that
Sure.
are having challenges finding enough good people to hire. And when we have the conversation about the skills, knowledge, skills, and abilities that people with disabilities can bring to their organization, and people get passionate about that. So I have several really cool clients doing really great stuff, and I am just helping them get connected with the right resources, the federal and state government agencies, the nonprofits in their community, the voc rehab system, and just helping them achieve their goals of attracting and hiring great people, and
Well,
being
Kirk,
inclusive of people with disabilities.
well, it's amazing. And have you found that a lot of people don't know a lot about people who are blind? And you must be like really maybe pun intended opening their eyes to what people who are blind or visually impaired can do.
Yeah, yeah, and I'd say most of the people I work with have a passion around social justice, inclusion, fairness,
Mhm.
giving back to the community. And we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion as language people are using these days. And
Right, right.
mostly that starts with race and gender, but then to have that conversation to expand it to disability. Um, one company I'm working with, one of the co-owners' mom is blind, and she's taught blind kids for her career. One of the companies I'm working with is privately held. The owner has a severe learning disability that they've kept hidden, for their whole working life until now. And
You find that a lot. A lot of people have, one disability or the other that they might be hiding.
yeah, many people do, and many people have folks with disabilities in their lives. Whatever the number is, 54 million people in the United States have disabilities. I think 15% is a number that gets thrown out. So if 15% of the people in the United States have a disability, it's very likely most people know somebody. They might not, they might not think of it that way. They might not think about employment, but
That must have been,
there's there.
I'm sorry, go on.
I'm just saying there's a lot more awareness now than there was even 5 or 10 years ago, and I think um, internet, social media, streaming. There's just so many more sources of information now for people. Um, Mainstreaming in schools, like I went to, like I said, a residential school where all the disabled kids went. Now the disabled kids are in the classroom um, with non-disabled children. They're going to school together. They're growing up together. They know each other. It's just exposure. So
Sure,
I'm a
exactly.
I'm a researcher. I've got a PhD in leadership and change, so I really love research. So research shows that it's proximity. That if an employer hires a person with a disability, they're very likely to hire more. If a work group
Right.
in a company hires one person with a disability, they're much more likely to hire more, just because people get that. People don't know. If you haven't worked with someone with a disability and seen how the special tools and techniques allow successful work, you just don't have any way to conceptualize it. So once you see it um, and experience it, then it becomes obvious that, hey, it's
What's
just everyone needs tools to do their work. Everyone approaches things a little bit differently. Um,
hmm,
so
what's your sales pitch when you go into someone who they've never ever met, a person who's
yeah,
disabled? What are the things you tell them?
well, the main message is that the lived experience of disability, living with a disability every day, allows people to develop strengths that other people may not have, or to the degree that they have. So employers say that they want employees that are, resilient, have grit, know how to figure out problems, creative problem solving, know how to work in a team, know how to communicate, know how to evaluate and manage risk, know how to work independently. So living every day, me as a blind person or a person in a wheelchair user or a deaf person, whatever the disability may be, living every day with that experience of managing in a world that is not designed for you, um, just gives you unique opportunities to develop those things, to develop resilience and creative problem solving, and the ability to work in teams and all those things. So one little example I give is when I went off to college, I had all my books in Braille up through high school, and the college textbooks were a different story. So I would get some of them. Recording for the Blind and Dyslexic would record some of them, but then I had to hire readers, and the State Department of Services for the Blind, gave me funds to pay minimum wage to hire other students to read. And so I was 18, freshman in college, moving into the dorm, taking all the classes. But at the same time, I needed to find readers. So I was interviewing people, I was hiring people, I was paying them, I was tracking the expenses. Sometimes I had to fire someone.
Oh,
So
wow.
I had a set of experiences as an 18-year-old that my classmates didn't have, just because I was blind and I needed to get my work done, and I needed to do it in a different way than they did. So that's just a very small example. There's a book called The Talent Code that talks about how people develop talents and how it's brain science, and how if you undertake certain activities on a repetitive basis, you actually develop you know, parts of your brain that other people don't develop. So
Oh my
that
God.
that's my main message. If you want some great employees who can give you a competitive advantage, can make your workforce better than your competitors' workforces, um, include people with disabilities, and I'll help you figure out how to do that.
And there's a loyalty factor, isn't there, Kirk?
Yeah, I guess that's the flip side. 7 out of 10 people with severe disabilities aren't working, and those that do, 30 a third feel they're underemployed. So the fact of the matter is that we have less options than people without disabilities. So once we find an employment situation that works well for us, much less likely to leave, much less likely to jump to another job. So um, there's good statistics that show there's lower turnover um, with disabled employees. I hope someday that we have the same same level of opportunity as our non-disabled colleagues, so that we have the opportunity to change jobs as frequently as they do. But that's not the case right now. And absenteeism is lower. Um, safety records are better.
And isn't that
Employee,
all an irony?
yeah, employee satisfaction is better in organizations that are disability inclusive. Customer perceptions are better. So there's really actually good data out there that shows there are competitive advantages to including people with disabilities.
Well, Kirk, in the time we have left, did you want to tell us about your family special, the frittata?
Sure. I made the frittata. It is an egg
Mhm.
dish, and I say it's kind of like a green salad. You can do whatever you want with it. This, in a green salad, greens are the common denominator. In a frittata, it's eggs. It's a baked dish. I use usually a eight by eight baking pan if I'm going to make an 8 egg frittata. Use a pie pan if I'm going to make a smaller one, a 6 egg frittata. So I just preheat the oven to about 350, spray the pan with cooking spray. You can use whatever you have around. I think I've never done it without onions. So a couple nice thick slices of onion. You can chop it, you can dice it if you like bigger slices. You'll, as you experiment, you'll figure out what you like. The one I made on your show, I started with the onion. I thinly sliced half of a red bell pepper, threw it in the pan. I got 8 large mushrooms. I have them, slice them, cut off the end of the stem, but you put in the stems, slice the mushrooms. It's going to bake only about 25 minutes. So if you want to use meat, it doesn't cook hot enough for to use raw meat. So I used some just some kielbasa, pre-cooked kielbasa sausage.
Oh
You can
yeah.
use ham or bacon or hot links or whatever you have, or you can um, go vegetarian. Is perfectly cool. So then, yeah, I had onions, bell pepper, mushrooms in my baking dish. I've put in, if you have cooked vegetables, I've put in spinach before, I've put in broccoli, I've put in asparagus that I had. So it's a good way to use up little dribs and drabs of what you have in your refrigerator.
Oh
And
yeah.
the pan, the pan may seem very full, but there's definitely room for eggs. So then I beat 8 eggs. I add some milk or water to help the whites and yolks blend, and I beat it pretty well, so it's kind of bubbly, fluffy. At that point, you could put in some grated cheese into the egg mixture if you want. I've put in sour cream before to give it different flavor and texture. I
That
make
sounds good.
lasagna at Christmas time, so this year I had some leftover ricotta, so I put half a cup of that in the eggs when I made one
Yum.
around Christmas time. Just beat that together, and then I slowly pour it into the center of the baking dish, and it will distribute itself. You don't have to stir it, don't have to do anything. It'll get where it needs to go in the pan. Gravity, physics will do its work. And then if you haven't put cheese in with the eggs, I like to kind of finally, I cut a couple slices of cheese, cut them into sticks, and then turn them and dice them, and then sprinkle the dice evenly over the top, and that kind of gives these little melty, cheesy pockets, which I
Oh,
like.
nice. That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we like a lot of fresh ground pepper, so I will. I'll give it about 50 grinds with our pepper
Whoa.
grinder, but you can judge. You can judge for yourself. I've put in pickled jalapenos before.
Oh,
You can put a pinch of cayenne. You could put a little nutmeg if you want. So again, it's like making a salad.
sure. It's like you can
You
be a
can
food artist.
you can do with it what you will. Then I usually put it in for 25 minutes, and then you can either check it to see if it's firm. You don't want any liquid standing on top. If it's not firm to the touch, then I put it back in. Or if you don't want to bother with that, just bake it at 350 for 25 minutes. Turn your oven off. Leave your oven door closed, and then wait about 15 minutes. You can get the rest of your breakfast together, get your table set, prepare your fruit or whatever you're going to have with it, and pull it out and enjoy. Some people say frittatas should be served room temperature. I like mine warm, and it heats up really well in a microwave. And many Sundays, our children are grown and out of the house now, but many Sundays I would get up before the rest of the family and put on a pot of coffee and put on some music and leisurely make a frittata. And
Wow.
the
So,
family would come downstairs and smell it, and we'd have a nice family breakfast.
Shay Kirk.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Well, if anyone is, for those of you who are listening, you can find Kirk's frittata recipe at www.cookingwithoutlookingtv.wordpress.com. And Kirk, if anyone wants to reach out to you because they
yeah.
hire someone, how do they reach out to you?
Well, LinkedIn is great. So it's Kirk Adams, PhD on LinkedIn, or you put in Kirk Adams, Seattle, I'll pop right up. Or email is simple. It's my first name and last name followed by 3 zeros. So KIRKADAMS000 at gmail.com.
Well, thank you, Kirk, for being with us today. I appreciate all the time you spent with us
Oh
on.
yeah, it was great.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you.
So Renee, when I graduated from high school, a friend of the family gave me a cookbook, and it was called Cooking Without Looking. It was in Braille. It was 3 soft cover volumes, and it was derived from someone's master's thesis
The lady in
in
Texas. Yeah.
Texas. In Texas, yes. So I
From the mid 60s.
yeah, and I have an oatmeal cookie recipe and a coleslaw recipe that I cut out of those cookbooks, and I use them to this day. So
Oh my God, that sounds
yeah,
great. Are you a
yeah.
raisin man? Do you put the raisins in
Oh,
them?
absolutely,
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
me too. More raisins,
Yeah,
the better.
that's right. All right. Well, thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you, Kirk. And for all of
Yeah.
you listening, you can find us at www.cookingwithoutlookingtv.wordpress.com. You can go to our Cooking Without Looking YouTube channel. And you can listen to all of these podcasts anywhere you get your podcasts and even on Alexa enabled devices. Thank you again, Kirk, for
Hey,
helping us change the way we see blindness. Have a
yeah, yeah. Have a great day.
okay, bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.